In American culture, the flex has a very specific vocabulary. It's the truck that's slightly too big for the driveway. It's the vacation photo with the caption that pretends it's not a flex. It's the phrase, "we just upgraded," said at exactly the right volume for the room to hear. None of this is accidental. It's a language, and most people learn to speak it before they even realize they're fluent. The flex isn't really about the object. It's about the message the object sends: I'm doing well, I've arrived, I'm not falling behind. And in a culture that ties personal worth so tightly to visible success, that message becomes almost mandatory to send, even when the bank account behind it tells a very different story. Here's the uncomfortable math nobody puts on a billboard. A large percentage of visible wealth in America is financed, not owned. The car is leased. The house is one missed paycheck from a problem. The vacation went on a car that's still being paid off in October. The flex, in other words, is often a performance funded by debt, a costume that costs monthly interest to keep wearing. And the pressure to keep performing it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from every direction at once. Social media feeds curated to look effortless, neighborhoods where one upgrade triggers 3 more, family gatherings where net worth gets silently ranked by what everyone drove into the driveway. Opting out of that isn't just a financial decision, it's a social one, and it takes more nerve than people give it credit for, which is exactly why the people who actually opt out tend to be quiet about it. Not because they're ashamed, because they've realized something the rest of the room hasn't yet. Here's the reversal. For the people who've actually built financial security, the flex isn't what they buy. It's the gap between what they earn and what they need. That gap, call it margin, is the single most valuable asset most Americans never learn to track. Margin means a job loss is inconvenient, not catastrophic. It means a medical bill gets paid, not financed. It means the word emergency doesn't automatically pair with the word fund in a panic. And none of that shows up in a driveway. You can't photograph 12 months of expenses sitting in a savings account. You can't post a screenshot of "I don't owe anyone anything" and expect it to get the same engagement as a new kitchen. This is precisely why margin became the quiet flex. It's status that only the person holding it can actually feel. There's no audience for it, which means there's no external validation either. The only reward is internal, the specific physical sense of not flinching when the car needs a new transmission or the rent goes up again. Living below your means in this light isn't about restriction, it's a redirect. Every dollar not spent maintaining an image becomes a dollar building margin instead. Someone earning a modest, ordinary salary who keeps their expenses meaningfully below their income for a decade will often end up with more actual financial power than someone earning twice as much who spends to match it. That's the entire flex reframed. Not "look at what I have," but "watch how little of this can actually touch me." This shows up in specific, repeatable choices. Not dramatic ones, just consistent ones. The car gets driven into the ground on purpose. Not out of necessity, out of math. A paid-off car with no payment is quietly worth more financially than a financed upgrade with a monthly bill attached, even if the upgrade looks better in a driveway. The house doesn't scale with the raise. Income goes up, the mortgage doesn't automatically follow. The difference gets redirected instead of absorbed, often into accounts nobody at the dinner table ever hears about. Subscriptions and memberships get audited, not accumulated. Every recurring charge is treated as a small, permanent tax on the future, so it gets reviewed instead of just renewed on autopilot. Big purchases get delayed on purpose, not because of scarcity but as a filter. Waiting 30 days on a want tends to reveal whether it was actually desired or just triggered by seeing someone else have it first. Net worth gets tracked privately, consumption gets tracked publicly by everyone else. The numbers that actually matter to this group live in a spreadsheet, not a caption. What other people see is, by design, the least interesting part of the picture. None of these choices are visible from the outside. That's not an accident. It's the entire mechanism. The flex works precisely because nobody's watching it happen. The psychological shift underneath all of this is a change in audience. Traditional flexing answers a question aimed outward. What will other people think? Living below your means answers a question aimed inward. What does this actually do for my future self? That shift changes the emotional payoff of spending entirely. A traditional flex delivers a quick hit, admiration, a comment, a moment of "they noticed." It fades fast, which is exactly why it needs to be repeated, upgraded, and repeated again. Margin delivers a slower, quieter payoff, a sense of control that doesn't fade, because it isn't dependent on anyone else noticing it at all. There's also a stability effect that compounds. People optimizing for visible success tend to feel behind no matter how much they earn, because their expenses rise to match their income automatically. There's no gap for security to live in. People optimizing for margin tend to feel ahead even at modest incomes because the gap itself is the thing being built. And this reframes what flex even means at its root. A flex, by definition, is supposed to demonstrate strength, but visible spending, funded by debt, chasing approval, that's not strength, that's exposure. Real strength is the version nobody can see, because it doesn't need anyone to see it in order to be real. If you've ever felt a flicker of embarrassment about driving an older car, or quietly relieved that you don't have a car payment while everyone else does, that's not a coincidence. That instinct is often the earliest sign of exactly this shift happening, long before anyone would call it a strategy. The ultimate American flex was never about what shows up in a driveway. It's the version of freedom nobody can see, the gap between what you earn and what you need, quietly getting wider every year while everyone else is still trying to close it with a bigger purchase. What's one thing you stopped buying to upgrade? Once you realize what it was actually costing you, let me know below.